Dissipation of the Darkness, subtitled, or the Kingdom of the Antichrist. Jose Cicero Honorato. Part 3. Comparison of this history with prior knowledge of Masonry. Once in Lebanon, I began a series of studies, investigations, and comparisons, making use of everything published with respect to this. These tasks of consulting the different authorities concerning the matter took long years. The war from 1914 to 1918 occasioned an obligatory recess. The conflict ended. I renewed the investigation, requesting, through correspondence from Grand Orients, institutions of high rank, and important newspapers, details concerning the existence of a history that treats of the date of the foundation and the origin of Masonry. I sent letters to London, Paris, New York, Cairo, Berlin, Madrid, and Rome, obtaining the following scant replies. From the prestigious newspaper El Makatum, quote, "The oldest historical evidence of the history of Masonry dates, according to some, from 1217, according to others, from 1390. Ancient Masonic authors claim that Masonry dates from the era of Moses. We have no confirmation of this. Our cordial greetings," end quote. And from the Egyptian National Grand Orient, quote, "We do not possess any confirmation of the date of the foundation of Masonry. The only thing we know is that in the year 1917, a book was published entitled 2 Centuries of Freemasonry," unquote. Knowing through later references that this booklet is one of the most important documents on which the Masons depend, I began to seek it, finding it in the Library of International Masonic Affairs in Newcastle. Now from the Grand Orient in London, quote, "We lack certain data concerning the date of the foundation of Masonry. We do know that it had already existed in the year 1717, unquote. From the rest of the cities mentioned, I received no reply whatever, from which I deduced their silence indicated their ignorance concerning the mystery. Then, on the basis of all previous studies, in the light of the events that happened in the last 2.5 centuries to date, a lapse characterized by a permanent conflict between Masonry on the one hand and Mohammedanism on the other, and in view of the text of this history we present, all substantiated by the document booklet, 2 Centuries of Masonry, there is no doubt concerning the authenticity of this manuscript. My intentions. Aided by Providence, which guided me miraculously towards this discovery, I have decided definitively to publish this history. On doing so, I am not moved either by personal interest or by the hope of profit. If so, I might have waited more than a quarter of a century. My intentions are to keep the promises and the agreement made, to dissipate the darkness that for 19 centuries has enveloped a humanity that is wavering in doubt, to reveal this mystery to the eyes of men, to alert them before this cruel danger. I must point out as well that I was inspired by the exclusively Christian intentions of de Moraes, in accord with one of his declarations that states thus, "With this action of ours we extend to the Christian religion a great benefit, eliminating the forces of evil that attack it, from this fantasy encrusted by the absurd, and you especially, with your task in the Turkish Empire, will extend another great service to the Muslim religion," unquote. I pray to God that this work may be a beacon for all that it, in general and in particular, that it may illuminate the minds of the reduced number of heirs who successfully guard and monopolize manuscript. Signed, Awad Khoury. Agreement between the signers below. Mr. Lawrence George Samuel Lawrence, Russian, traveling jewelry merchant, at present of Rio de Janeiro, and Mr. Awad Khoury of Sheikh, Lebanon, near Beirut, Syria, at present a merchant in Rio de Janeiro and charged with the private affairs of His Excellency, Dr. Prudente de Moraes, President of the Republic of Brazil. The following has been agreed upon. Mr. Lawrence, last heir and sole proprietor of the history, The Mysterious Force, ancient Hebrew manuscript, says, "My father and grandparents, who have bequeathed this history, apparently have not considered that the Arabic and Turkish languages are two rich and important languages, and that Arabia and Turkey are two immense countries, and in all their regions Freemasonry is now widespread. Therefore, I have considered it necessary to propagate our history mentioned above in said countries, translated to Arabic and later to Turkish, so that it will be published there and known as much as possible by all those who speak and understand said languages." Having just had, quote, "the honor of meeting Mr. Awad Corey, and considering the good intentions of my father and his ancestors, and according to their wills successfully made for the propagation of our history, I agree with Mr. Awad that he should translate to Arabic and later to Turkish our history, print it and propagate it in Arabia and in Turkey, reserving to himself alone all the rights of translation, reproduction, edition, and publication in those two languages. I prohibit him, as my father has prohibited me, to augment, omit, or change a single word of the history. He is engaged to translate it word for word in such a way that it remains textually as it is. All this comprises my great obligation to formally carry out the intentions of our ancestors, the principal proprietors of the history they have left to us successfully from the origin to my father and me. My acquaintance with Mr. Awad Corey was brought about by His Excellency Dr. de Moraes, who merits my gratitude for that introduction." Mr. Awad says, "I accept with full consent the clauses in this agreement, and I bind myself to carry them out textually when circumstances permit it, when no obstacle impedes me. This agreement was drawn up in private between the two of us in the presence of only Dr. de Moraes and with his most excellent advice. The two of us have requested him to permit the mention of his honorable name in the history. He has replied thus, 'If you succeed,' quote, 'if you succeed in printing it during my life, there is no need to mention my name. But if I die before the appearance of this history, no obstacle will impede your declaration, the details of this historic audience, and the mention of my name. In any case, whether living or dead, mentioned or not mentioned, I wish you all progress and pleasure equaling mine with respect to this history,' unquote."